Happy Hump Day, YouTube! Hope y'all are doing well. Like I said, I was going to be back very soon with my next stack of 5 things, and I actually meant to do this video a few days ago, but well, things got a little hairy, let's just say that. But here I am, ready to go through with you 4 books and 1 game. Let's get at her. First up, released in the year 2000, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Evil That Men Do. This was a good book, but of all the Buffy books I've read so far, it was probably the one that a little lower on the scale in terms of where I would rank it among my favorites in this series. Still really good. I really enjoyed the story. There hasn't been a bad Buffy book yet that I've read, but of course they all have their rankings in the Buffy hierarchy of the books that I've read so far. In this one, things are normal for the Scooby Gang as this book opens, but suddenly tragedy hits Sunnydale in a very different form than usual. One of the Sunnydale high school kids, Brian D'Alessandro or something like that, his name is, he gets a gun and ends up shooting his parents, and then takes the gun to school the next day and starts shooting up the schoolyard. And I can't remember if anybody dies at the school, but Xander helps one of the guys from the football team after he gets hit and helps him, tourniquet the wound and all that kind of thing. But the cops eventually show up and take Brian into custody for the murder of his parents, and then obviously the school shootings. And, usually you don't see guns in Buffy the Vampire Slayers. It's all stakes and fists and kicks against demons and stuff. Like something like a school shooting is for a very violent town, that's out of the ordinary from what usually goes on there, right? Oh, the cat's got a big tail. What's she up to? What are you doing, Fuzz? Did something scare you? Hey, Fuzz, what are you doing? You okay? No, she's cool. All right. So at first, it's kind of put off as, well, just a weird accident or something like that. But then the Scooby Gang eventually starts to investigate. Maybe there's more to this than it seems. And as they get into it, the whole town seems to start to suffer from a case of the angries. Everybody's confrontational, in a bad mood. Fights are starting all over the place. It seems as though the whole town is going aggressively crazy all at once together. Buffy doesn't seem to be affected by it, but even Willow is saying things to Buffy that are cutting her to the quick and being like, oh my God, like what the fuck? So this affliction is affecting everybody in town, but worst off, it's tearing this team apart who are responsible for keeping the place as safe as can be given the circumstances that surround Sunnydale. So in the meantime, we get a glimpse of the protagonists in this story, and they're a vampire pair by the name of Julian and Helen. They're a couple, but kind of a reluctant couple, and as the book goes along, it flashes back to Roman times when they were in the same realm as Caligula, the one of the Roman emperors, or I can't remember his real name, but Caligula was the name that he kind of went by. And he was a tyrant, and he was involved in some shady otherworldly things. And Helen was actually the friend of the Slayer at the time in that region. And Helen kind of betrayed Diana, her name was. And Diana was eventually taken captive, and Julian wanted to turn Helen into a vampire and have her be his girlfriend because she was very beautiful and whatnot. But Helen would not give in, and she's like, Diana's going to come and save me. But the way events were manipulated, Helen eventually gave in to being turned, and then gave in to all the bad feelings that went along with the whole situation, and eventually became an insufferable vampire bitch who ended up being a very nasty, violent, cruel piece of work throughout the ages, sort of thing. And when Buffy and Helen finally come face to face, Buffy eventually tells Giles that she met this vampire named Helen, and Giles is immediately like, what? Oh, you got to be careful with her. Like, she's killed so many Slayers, and she might be able to kill you too, Buffy. Like, this is serious business. So suddenly Oz gets into a car accident, goes missing. Cordelia eventually goes missing. So what the basic plot of this is Julian and Helen are trying to take Sunnydale over and create the start. This Sunnydale's the start of their own Roman Empire, basically. They want to take over first Sunnydale and then branch out and eventually the world, right? Sort of thing. And they're using Caligula's ashes to do so, which is actually in an urn in Buffy's mom's art gallery at the time, which eventually gets stolen from there by one of Helen and Julian's lackeys and starts to enter the fray of the storyline as well. So in the end, Buffy has to find a way to defeat these two vampires, save Oz, save Cordelia, eventually save Xander and Willow, who also get taken captive, and set everything to rights. And one of the main characters that factors in outside of the main cast and the main villains is Brian D'Alessandro's younger brother Mark, who witnessed Brian shoot his parents and knew it was because of a certain type of drug that Brian had acquired from one of the local Sunnydale kind of losers, skids or whatever. And Mark unwittingly took the drug and dumped it into the Sunnydale ravine where the dam is, which polluted the water supply. And this drug was responsible for basically the whole town going crazy. And Mark has all this guilt about Brian killing his parents and blah, blah, blah. So he becomes a central character in Buffy and her friends, eventually turning the tides against these vampires, and maybe getting some insights into how exactly did everything unfold, what exactly is going on, sort of thing. So in the end, of course, it all comes down to a fight between Buffy and, of course, Angel is involved against these two vampires underneath Willie the Snitch's place in these rock caverns, where they create this arena to set all the Scooby Gang in combat against various ghouls and demons and stuff like that. So Buffy's got to leap into the fray and save the day. But of course, she can't do it by herself. Will her friends rebound and get over their little anger snit that has been consuming them with all these events and help her out? Well, you just have to read to see exactly how the story ends. But yeah, great story. Like I said, not one of my favorites compared to all of the other books I've read, because there's been so many good ones, but still a great story and a great experience, of course. I haven't had one bad Buffy adventure yet. Next up, from 1992, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, Field of Death. So you may notice this looks a little different than the other Young Indiana Jones books that I've gone through. I'm all out of those ones. This one was a totally different series, and it was actually based on a TV show of the same name that was running around the time. And so each book is kind of, I think, based around an episode of the TV show. So this is number 2 in the series. And I believe it takes place in around September of 1916. Indy is around 17 years old, give or take, I think it was. And he finds himself in Verdun, France, where the war is raging. And he has followed his friend Remy to the war. Remy is an enlisted soldier in the war who's fighting the Germans. And Indy wanted to go with him and get a bit of adventure or whatever. In order to do so, he has pretended he is a Belgian named... Oh shit, now I forget what his name was. Oh fuck, I forget. He goes by some alias, some Belgian alias. Henri de France, I think his name is. So he ends up becoming a courier in the army, posing as a Belgian. And so basically he patrols the lines on a motorcycle or on foot or whatever, and gets orders given between the top of the army's hierarchy out to the front lines, where they are given their instructions on what the soldiers are supposed to be doing, sort of thing, right? So Indy, everything's all fine at first. Remy's actually been injured in a fight, and he's actually in the hospital. And Indy visits him, and Remy's like, I don't want to go back out there, man. This is bullshit. And he's like pretending he's more hurt than he is, because he doesn't want to go back out there and get killed, sort of thing. So Indy's like, it's cool, Remy, whatever. We'll figure out a way to get you out of this. But eventually Indy's called back to duty. So he's running all these notes between the front lines and whatever. So the French army is kind of stalled at the moment because the lines that they're facing across from the Germans right now, the Germans have taken over. It's called Fort Douamat or something like that, which is this big building that seems to be impenetrable, and the Germans have all these machine gun nests set up around them, and they have the high ground. So the French army is really at a disadvantage here in trying to take the fort back over. So Indy is privy to some of the meetings from the top generals in the army, and there's two guys that are especially on opposite sides of what they think should be done in this situation. One of the head guys, a real weasel sounding guy by the sounds of it from the book, wants to take Fort Douamat at all costs. So he's like, we're going to storm it again at this time or whatever. And meanwhile, another guy that's in the meeting with him is like, are you fucking crazy? Like, how many times do we have to throw our soldiers at this fort trying to get it back, only to have them all shot dead and reduce our numbers? Like, you're insane. But the guy's like, well, that's what's happening. So Indy's seeing all this, right? So he's running orders back and forth. They try the attack again. It spectacularly fails. And he actually ends up on the front lines during this, trying to rescue some soldiers and bring them back. And so he sees things up close and personal, how nasty they can be. And he starts to get very concerned about the stupid decisions being made by these generals in the French army. So in the end, Indy is tasked with once again running messages to the front line saying, okay, we're going to do it again. Everybody get ready to die, sort of thing, right? So Indy does a very heroic thing, and when he's out on his motorcycle running the instructions to the front line, he finds a secluded area where nobody can really see him, right? And then pulls over, lights his motorcycle on fire, and blows it up and whatever. And then he got out far enough that he has to walk back. He's pretending he got attacked by the enemy or like a plane bombardment or whatever, and then he's going to walk back to report. And in the meantime, the opportunity of attacking that day will have passed, and he will have at least saved the soldiers for at least one more day, sort of thing, right? So this was a very different type of Indy adventure. I enjoyed the book, but it was probably my least favorite of all the young Indiana Jones books that I've read. And not because it was a different type of series than the old one, strictly because it didn't really have any essence of the supernatural in it, right? So many times in an Indy adventure, like he'll find this sword that unlocks this ghost of whatever, and the ghost will appear before him. Or I forget which book that was. There's always some sort of fantastical, supernatural, unbelievable type of event in his stories. And I really like that part of it. Like in The Last Crusade, when he's trying to get the chalice, and he's got to walk over that invisible bridge, and and then the keeper is there keeping the chalice, the old knight. I love that type of shit. And when they opened up the Ark at the end of Raiders in the first movie, and the fucking melts the guy's face and everything, like, I love that kind of shit. A story is a lot less interesting to me when everything is based in strict reality, right? That's why I can't read, like, I remember I read a John Grisham book once about a lawyer, and I was like, oh my God, right? It was so, and I'm sure he's a great writer, and there's many people that love his books, but to me, it was like, somebody fucking kill me. This is awful. Like, this was so dry and boring. I need the unbelievable to a certain degree in a lot of the books that I read, right? So this book didn't have that, and that's probably why it's probably my least favorite Indy adventure till this point. I still liked it. I just didn't love it like I love the rest, right? So take that for what it's worth. Next up, number 12 in the G.I. Joe Find Your Fate series, called Operation Jungle Doom. So in this story, Cobra is in league with an evil scientist named Dr. Diamond or something like that. And he's essentially created this poison mist that can be released into the Amazon. And within 6 weeks, every plant, tree, whatever that it's touched will crumple and die. So considering like 40% of the Earth's oxygen is produced in the Amazon, this is kind of a crippling blow for the Earth, right? So, and Cobra's thing is like, yeah, we've got the antidote, but you know, show us the money if we're gonna stop polluting the Amazon, right? So basically, they're gonna have Earth's nuts in a sling by performing this act on the Amazon, right? So you enter as a new GI Joe named Lightning, who your strength is tactical decision making and doing it fast and making the right decision. So you're the strategist on this mission. So when the book starts off, you're faced with two choices. First, go to the Amazon and try and solve the problem directly where this mist is going to be released. And for that mission, you're teamed up with Lady J, Lowlight, Beachhead, and Wetsuit. So we got some interesting new Joes in there. Like Lady J and Beachhead have been in a lot of these books, but Lowlight has maybe only been in one before that I can think of. He's not in a lot. And then I think Wetsuit's only been in maybe one before that too. And they're both really cool characters. Wetsuit's one of my favorites. So you get some variation there, right? Some new Joes mixed in. And then the other path you can take is go to Dr. Damon's lab in the Andes Mountains. So you're climbing glaciers and shit like that. So in that mission, you're teamed up with Alpine and Iceberg, who are very suited to the cold weather and climbing and all that stuff, as well as Roadblock and Airtight. Now, this is an awesome team because I don't think we've seen Iceberg yet in one of these books. We've seen Alpine maybe only once, and I don't think we've seen Airtight at all, maybe in one book before. And that's awesome because, Roadblock's been into pretty much all the books, I think, up to this point. But Airtight is one of my favorite G.I. Joes ever, if not my favorite. So to see him enter the story, it's like, yeah, obviously I'm picking that story arc first, right? And I did, and I made it through successfully on my first try, which is always my goal. And then, of course, as usual, I read through all the different endings in the book. And yeah, it was a really good book. It was like, these G.I. Joe Find Your Fates are all very consistent. The stories are always fun, fast-paced. A lot of your favorite characters are in there. Like I said, there's a lot of repeat on characters, but there's also some different guys cycled in here and there. And it's just fun to be reliving G.I. Joe stories that I've never heard before at such a late age. I mean, I'm not that old, but I am. So, whatever. Next up, also released in 1986, you probably know where I'm going with this. The next Transformers Find Your Fate adventure. This is number 8 in the series, and it is called Project Brain Drain. That reminds me of the Riddler's, or I guess Edward Nygma, one of his many scenes in the Batman Forever movie from back in the mid 90s, I think it was. Fucking awesome movie. I love that movie. I was a Jim Carrey fucking aficionado at the time, so hearing he was going to be the Riddler in that movie, I was like, well, I was already planning on seeing this movie many times, but now that Jim Carrey's in it, yeah, add a whole another dozen times to that or so, right? So that's what Brain Drain always reminds me of, is Edward Nygma. But anyways, in this book, there is a rock and roll show, a huge rock and roll show planned up in, I can't remember, some place near where the Autobots base is. And there's going to be almost 500,000 humans in attendance watching this rock concert. So the Decepticons, Galvatron, has come up with this plan to essentially, they've got a device that will, you've always heard of humans' untapped potential in their mind. Like, we only use apparently 10% of our brain power. I really wish I could use more because I feel like I'm getting so stupid in my old age. But so the Galvatron and the Decepticons have jury-rigged up this device that will drain the humans of all this untapped brain potential and convert it into energy for their cause, sort of thing. So the way that the Autobots find out about this scheme is that Sparkplug Witwicky has been working on some sort of radio device, and he accidentally stumbles upon a communication between, I think, Soundwave and Galvatron, maybe. talking about Project Brain Drain and how it's going to happen at this concert or whatever. And moments before, Spike, Sparkplug's son, had just left to attend. Oh, this is a surprise, Jan. Sorry, to attend this concert. So Sparkplug basically is forced into two decisions. He hasn't really perfected this radio system he's working on yet, so he's still got a bit of work to do on it before he can use it properly. So he can spend the time continuing with the radio and then radio Autobot headquarters, or he can jump in his car and race to Metroplex and Autobot City and inform the Autobots in person, right? Sort of thing. So I believe I chose the first time to drive back to Metroplex, and my first time through, I failed miserably. So yeah, one for two on these two books in getting a correct ending the first time around. Yeah, so then after that, it's just you make all the tactical decisions on, okay, how are we going to approach this situation with the Decepticons? Are we going to go to the concert and lie in wait for them there and potentially risk the humans' lives? Or should we stage a diversion at Decepticon headquarters and attack it and hopefully draw them back to help defend the headquarters so they don't ever get a chance to use Project Brain Drain on the humans at the concert? But they don't know, well, will Galvatron stay there and use it anyways and just send the rest of his goons back? You know, you got to weigh in all these strategic, tactical decisions into your final answer, right? Yeah, really cool book. Again, it was mostly newer Transformers that were debuted in the Transformers movie. Ultra Magnus, Hot Rod, Cup was in there. There was still some old Autobots still in the mix. Bumblebee and Jazz both showed up. And then for Decepticons, Galvatron was there. The Coneheads, Dirge, Thrust, and Ramjet, Laserbeak, Soundwave, Thundercracker. So for the Decepticons, or no, Thundercracker couldn't have been there. I think he was in the book though, because Thundercracker was turned into Scourge, right? So, but yeah. So, anyways, that's a bit of a continuation problem. But for the Decepticons, pretty much Galvatron was the only like new character from the movie. But the Autobots were mostly new. So yeah, again, I ran through all the different outcomes in the book, did all the different endings, and yeah. Again, same as G.I. Joe with these Transformers book, they're all consistent, they're all fun stories, and once again, just love reading all these stories. I almost enjoy finding them later in life and being surprised by them and buying them at this point than if I'd had them all along, sort of thing, as a kid, right? It's kind of a nice little treat as I'm in my 40s to find these types of things all these years later and manage to still be surprised by things, right? That's always a fun feeling. So last up, a video game I downloaded on my PS5, originally released in 2019 and published by Taito. I love Taito. The Ninja Saviours, Return of the Warriors. So this game is a redo of a game that was released back, I can't remember if it was on the NES or I think it was the Super Nintendo, if I remember correctly. A game from back, I guess, in the early 90s or whatever, on the Super Nintendo. So they re-released it decades later, and the levels apparently are all still the same, but they added some new unlockable characters. They polished it up a bit. They changed the combat system to a certain degree. And yeah, just made some improvements, I guess. So the story is it's some unnamed planet or city or whatever, and it is on the decline because a bad guy named Balgar, something like that. I can't remember. He kind of looks like he looks like something out of like Lord of the Rings, like something orcish. He's got these pointed ears and his face is all brown and gray, and he's got these red eyes. He looks like a freak, and he essentially has created an army to take over and subjugate everybody. He's basically brainwashed everybody into this acceptance of this state of being. And of course, with everybody just being mindless zombies and living under this tyrannical rule of this guy, conditions in the city and everywhere have declined, and everything's getting very, very bad. But there is a resistance that has been brewing underground that are opposed to this, and they know they can win the battle, but they plan on doing so. They don't have the numbers, so they plan on doing so by creating all these androids that they're going to use to fight the battles for them, and in particular send one of them after this guy Bulgar or whatever his name is, and assassinate him and chop the head off the beast and set things eventually back to rights, right? So, but before they can properly develop these androids, Bulgar or whatever his name is, I don't quote me on his exact name, I forget. He finally lays the smackdown on the resistance and attacks them. But so as like a last ditch effort, the resistance has to release these androids out into the wild in a last ditch attempt to, like, hopefully they're good enough. Hopefully they can kill this guy and set things to rights, right? So that's kind of the story. So you take one of these androids into battle, fight through 8 stages, I think it is. Each stage ends with a boss, and save the day basically, and reclaim this city or planet or whatever it is. So it's a really fun game. It's at first I thought it seems kind of simple. There's not much to it, but the gameplay is fun. The graphics are awesome. I love the looks of these type of games, and there is, despite the levels themselves being somewhat easy for the most part, many of the bosses are just menaces to deal with. And so what I learned going through the game is that there's 3 characters you can choose from the outset, and each of them have different attributes in terms of speed, power, being able to jump or not. So certain bosses especially, you can pretty much take any character through the actual levels, but when you get to the boss, sometimes the bosses are very character specific. Like, oh, I need to take the ninja guy to beat this boss because this guy just kicks my ass all the time, and I just need the ninja's power to wear him down before he kills me, sort of thing, right? So it's very, you got to be very aware of that you got to take the right character into battle in a lot of these situations. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. You can play 2-player, of course, which I guess wasn't a feature, or that's what it said when I read up on it, is that the original game didn't have a 2-player feature, which seems crazy to me, but now it does, so you can play with a buddy. So yeah, really fun game, super short, but at the same time also challenging in a lot of ways. And you, like I said, there's 2 characters to unlock by beating the game, so it gives you a reason to continue to play. And there's also a time trial mode, so if you want to try and set some records on that, there's another reason to continue playing the game after you've made it through the story mode. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. Again, I've said this a million times, I'd rather have a really fun, cool, short game than a medium or long game that's like, meh, it was okay, I didn't love it. I'd much rather have short and sweet than long and kind of meh. So just my 2 cents. And my 2 cents are worth 0 cents. But it's my channel, so I can do whatever I want, right? So hope you enjoyed. I've already got only one thing on the pile yet for my next round. So we might have a little more of a break between this video and next, but maybe not. Who knows? I got next week off work, so I could get into all sorts of shit. So, but anyways, until next time, whenever that may be, enjoy life, people. Peace. Meow.